Darius, I see that you've got a nice gash on your knee there and a black eye, and I was just wondering if you could tell us, tell us your story of how you got it.
Well, actually, there's two stories to this. One is about my leg and the other about my eye. Now, I'll start off with my leg, I live in a small little town, but one thing my mom is very, very strict about is being late. And that's one thing, I cannot be late. So I was walking after school, and I took a little longer than I usually do, and I looked at the time, I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to be late. So I was walking down the street, and just sitting there, and all of a sudden a huge snake, anaconda thing, I don't know what it was, but it was huge. And it was just slithering towards me, and just comes at me and tries to bite my leg. And I barely moved out of the way. It almost got me. I was scared, and I sat there, and I just stomped on its head and everything, and it still was moving, so I took off running. And I'm sitting there dodging trees, jumped over a fence, and all of a sudden a huge tiger comes out of nowhere. Just this huge tiger, and I was confused on why a tiger was in this guy's yard. But he comes at me, tries to swipe at my leg, and I do a somersault on its back. Just roll right over it, grab its tail, twist it around, and throw it in a tree. Now, this is a big tiger, and, I'm a pretty strong guy, but that was pretty difficult to do that. I mean, not a lot of people can. So this tiger is just sitting in this tree, just looks like a scared little kid, jumps out and just runs away like crying. I felt kind of bad for a second, but then again it tried to eat me, so it's okay. So I look at the time still, and I'm going to be late. There's no doubt about it. So I take off running, and I'm just running as fast as I possibly can. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this huge elephant. Now the question is, why is an elephant in the U.S. in the first place? I don't know. Unless it's escaped from the zoo. Of course, then again, I encountered a tiger. But this elephant comes at me with this giant tusk. It just comes straight at my leg, And I do a backflip on top of it. Yes, a backflip. I don't know why I turned around to do a backflip, but I did. So I do a backflip on top of this elephant. Pull his ears as hard as I possibly can. I thought I was going to rip his ears straight off. So I'm pulling him, and I just start kicking him. Oh, and this elephant was in pain. You could just tell. He gets up and just takes off running, trampling over fences, houses, everything. So he just takes off running. So I'm finally to my house, and then all of a sudden, my sister just comes up to me and goes, "Where were you? Mom was worried, scared. You're late," and kicks me in the shin as hard as she can. And that's how I got the scar on my leg. Okay. So, yeah, the story about my eye now. This is a pretty interesting story, I find. But, so I got really bored that one day, and, I decided I wanted to go to Africa. And I was a pretty good runner, so I decided, hey, I want to run to Africa. So I decided to take the long way and everything. So I'm cutting through Canada, and I'm just running through Canada, and all of a sudden I see a grizzly bear, just a huge grizzly bear. And I've heard stories about these things. They're vicious killers. So I was like, oh no, what am I doing? I mean, I've never fought a grizzly bear before. I mean, I fought a tiger, an elephant, and everything, but not a grizzly bear. So I was scared. I didn't know what to do. So I'm sitting there facing it and stuff. I was confused about what to do, if I should go left, go right, jump over it, or actually fight it. So I'm just sitting there trying to decide, and all of a sudden, a huge gorilla comes up behind me, a gorilla. And I was like, why is a gorilla in Canada? I didn't know they lived in Canada. What is this? So I'm sitting there, gorilla on one side, grizzly bear on the other side, and I am confused on what to do and why these things are trying to attack me. So I'm sitting there going, what am I going to... I'm going to die. This is my last day. I'm going to die right here. And, but then I decided, I was like, wait. Yo, grizzly bear. This gorilla was talking mad stuff about you. He was talking bad. So this grizzly bear gets all mad and just stares at the gorilla. And starts yelling at it and everything. And this gorilla just gets all mad and they start fighting bad. Which clearly the gorilla would win because it's just a freak of nature and it's huge. So clearly it'd win. But while these two are fighting, I take off running. So that way I can get away and, be secretive about it. So I'm running and I cut through Greenland and decide to swim over to Ireland and stuff. So I'm running through Ireland, and I'm in this huge open field, and I notice there's this beautiful rainbow. It was gorgeous. And it was actually a double rainbow. I couldn't believe it. A double rainbow. I was so surprised. I was like, wow, a double rainbow. I've never seen that. Now, but, so I'm running through this field, and I'm just staring at it, and all of a sudden I trip over some giant pot. I was like, what is a pot just laying in the middle of a field? What is this? So I decide I go back and look inside of it, and it's a huge pot of gold. I was like, oh, wow. So I try to pick it up. I was going to carry it away, and all of a sudden I get drop kicked. Out of nowhere, just drop kicked. And I looked up, and I'm like, oh, it's a midget. Oh, it's a leprechaun. So I'm in awe that I've seen a leprechaun. I mean, I've heard stories about these things, but I never thought they existed. So I'm in awe while this leprechaun's just beating me up bad, just kicking me in the shins and drop kicking me and elbowing me in the face. And the whole time I was just sitting there taking it because I was in awe that I seen a leprechaun. So I'm like, wait a second. I'm getting beat up by a little midget leprechaun. What is wrong with me? So I decided to punt kick it over the trees and everything and over the rainbow. And then I take his pot of gold and I start running again. So I'm running and running, and I get to I finally get to Africa. And I finally make it there, and I was like, wow, this is Africa. But first couple steps, I meet a lion. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I can beat a lion. I outsmarted a stupid grizzly bear and a gorilla. I drop kicked the leprechaun. Actually, it drop kicked me, but I punted it over the rainbow. So I'm sitting there going, you know what? I'm tired of this. So I decided to face off against this lion. Piece of cake, right? So this lion's coming at me, and all of a sudden it gets on his back 2 legs. I was really like, what? How did it do that? And it's like, started trying to box me and stuff. So I started acting all like Muhammad Ali and everything on him, and I'm just sitting there punching him and knocking him back and forth, just beating him up bad, and he just couldn't do anything. He just couldn't, like, outspeed me nothing. I was just beating him up, and I was like, boom, right there on his jaw, and he just dropped. I knocked him out cold. So, obviously, that made all the other lions really mad because I knocked out their king. So, they start coming at me and everything, and I was like, oh, I'm tired of this. So, I decided to keep running, and I'm just running away from these lions and everything, and I run into some tribal member, which I guess that's offensive to run into some tribal member. So their whole tribe comes and takes me and ties me to these 2 trees. So I'm like, you know what? I have to get out of here. I can't be doing this. They were talking about eating me and everything, and I don't put up for that. I'm not dinner. So I use my super strength, and I break down the 2 trees, just pull them straight out of the ground. So I use this one tree as a club to beat up all these other tribal members. I'm just swinging it left and right, just destroying everything. So they start bowing down to me as like some kind of god or something. I was like, I'm not a god. I'm just really awesome and everything. So I'm like, I look at the time. I'm like, uh-oh, I'm supposed to be home by 8, and it's already 7:30. I was like, what? I'm going to be late. I got to get going. So obviously it would take too long to go back to the way I came. So I decided, to cut through the Atlantic Ocean and everything.
Didn't you tell me something about baboons too?
Oh, I'd rather not talk about that.
All right.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the story. So I decided, cut through the Atlantic Ocean. I'm not a strong swimmer. I never have been. It's okay, but I'm not very good at it. So, at least the Atlantic Ocean's it's not that big of a swim. So I started swimming, and I'm getting attacked by sea turtles and sharks and everything. And a giant squid comes out of nowhere and just tries to tangle me up. So I punch it right in the face, and it just doesn't know what to do. It's stunned. So I'm like, I can use this. I was like, so I jumped on its back and just tie it up, with the hair on my back. I use it as a rope, So I tie it up, and I'm riding this thing, and I come on shore. And everyone's like, whoa, this guy's riding a giant squid. This is awesome. So they started thinking I'm some kind of sea god or something. I was like, you know what? I'll let them believe what they want. So I go past that. I start running home, and I finally get there. And it's 8:01. So I'm late again. I'm like, I'm late. So I try to sneak downstairs, try to go to bed because I was exhausted from a long day. So I go to bed, and I close my eyes, and all of a sudden just hear this boom, 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 just coming down the stairs. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm trying to pretend like I'm sleeping, and all of a sudden I feel this huge just fist hit me right in the face. Just, oh, it hurt so bad. And it just pounded right in my face, and I was in severe pain, and I look up, and I'm like, what the heck? And my mom is standing over me, just starts screaming and yelling. You're like, you were a minute late. I can't believe you were late. Don't ever be late again. And just starts screaming at me. And, I mean, I didn't think it was necessary to punch me in the face. I mean, it hurt a lot. And, I mean, that's how I got my black eye.
Well, that was a very interesting story you told us there, Darius. Now, is there any words of advice you can tell to the listeners out there?
Yes. Stay away from baboons. They're evil.